Hi, Odyssey Camper here. This week I want to talk about whether it's smart to build your own DIY power system in a van or if you're better off just buying something. So last week I needed a haircut and I was going to run down to the barber, but I looked at the time and I thought I'm never going to get down there and then get all the way back before my business meeting, so I'm going to go grab a pair of scissors and cut my hair. I thought, well, how bad could it turn out, right? So I've never done it before. Scissored the top, I figured I watched people cut my hair and other people's hair for 50 years. How hard can it be? It's harder than it looks, but I think it came out okay. Scissored the top, scissored the sides, trimmed it off with a beard trimmer over the ears and whatnot, and it looked decent, I thought. Asked my wife how it looked, and she said, "You got a mullet." I said, "A mullet?" Well, I couldn't see the back, and she's like, "Yeah, it's kind of long in the back." So I got kind of the party in the back and business in the front thing going on. But it got me thinking that back in 2020, when we were all looking to get our hair cut and everything was shut down, at least here in Michigan it was, it never once occurred to me to cut my own hair. And there's so many things like that in life where you go and you do something and you never really think about the alternate way of doing it. And then years later you think, why the heck didn't I do that? And so it got me thinking, because I have another problem right now that I'm trying to solve. And that is putting my air conditioner in the van for the summer and running it off of the inverter. So my existing power system is 200 amp hours lithium iron phosphate with a 1500 watt inverter, and then all the trimmings and chargers and whatnot that go with that. And it's not enough to 1500 watts plus the surge of the air conditioner. It's not a big enough inverter. So I would need to replace my inverter and go probably to an 1800 with a higher surge. And when I do that, I'm going to have to upgrade the cables at the same time. The cable's going to the inverter because it's going to carry more current now. So I looked at that, and it's probably about $200 to upgrade the cables and put a pure sine wave inverter in there. Or I could build my own soft start or buy a soft start. Soft starts are, last time I checked, like $270, $300, so fairly expensive. And that reduces the current during startup, or the power requirements during startup. And so you're able to run an air conditioner on a smaller system. I could probably build one for $80, but I've never done it. So, I'm vacillating, trying to figure out, do I want to upgrade my existing system, or is there a better solution? And a little while ago, I did some video on YouTube where I had my EcoFlow Delta 2 unit that I use in the garage. And I bought that unit because it's a turnkey system. And if I was on the road, I wanted my wife to be able to run it without having to, without needing an engineering degree. I wouldn't say that the system in my van is that complicated, but you have to know where the disconnect switches are, and she wouldn't be comfortable doing that. So I wanted something that you just plug in the freezers to it, throw the switch, and you're done. So I went with the EcoFlow unit, and forgive me if I ever say EcoPower, because I'm constantly saying EcoPower when I mean EcoFlow. The brand is EcoFlow. So I went with the Delta 2 standard, not max. And I also bought the spare battery for that unit, just so it would have a little extra reserve capacity. And it does a lot of neat things. So it got me thinking, well, okay, if I go back and rebuild the system I have, let's say I'm starting off, and this is really what this podcast is for. This particular episode is you're starting off, you haven't built your system. If you built a system and it works, great. But if you haven't done it yet, you might be looking at building your own system. And I think it makes a certain amount of sense if you're going to build a massive system like 400 amp hour batteries and have 800 watts of solar. There's some cost savings to be had there. But if you're going with a smaller system like I have, with 200 amp hours, it's funny to say small system, and maybe 2,000 watts of inverter power, how does that compare with something like the EcoFlow? And just so you know, there's also a Blue Eddy unit out there, which I'll talk about a little bit, that I think looks pretty good. But what I have is an EcoFlow, so that's what I'm going to talk about. And so I started comparing the two systems. If I were to rebuild what I have in the van today with today's prices, I'd be looking at $230 for the Renogy DC to DC charger, and which includes an MPPT solar charger within it. And that unit, mine's a 30 amp. They don't make it anymore. They only make a 50 amp, apparently, looking at the website. And I think it's around $230. So that unit's nice because it charges off the alternator. It also pulls from solar, and it has a really neat feature that I like and that I would miss if it wasn't there, which is that it can trickle charge the battery. So once your house batteries are full, it can trickle charge the starting battery, is what I meant to say. So you know, if you're off in the backwoods and maybe you have a small drain on it, your battery's not going to go dead while you're out there. Now, I carry a jump pack, and I think everyone should carry a jump pack, so I've got a backup system there, but I just thought that was kind of a cool feature of it. Okay, that's generally not available on these all-in-one systems. So then if I add to my system the batteries, I paid more, but today's prices, you can get 100 amp hour batteries, you know, decent ones, fair ones, for $200 a piece. So let's say $400 in batteries. Now, cables and switches, another $100. An hour meter to tell how much power you've used, $50. An inverter, maybe $150 for a pure sine inverter. So that system would cost, without things like the battery holders that I bought and little items, $930. Okay, so let's compare that with the EcoFlow Delta 2. Now, that unit was, when I bought it, $499, and it's currently listing on Amazon at $599, so $600. If you add the extra battery to it, which would make it more comparable to my system, it's $999, so $1,000. So you're looking at basically $69 more to buy a turnkey system that'll do exactly what the system in my van would do. And there are some advantages and some minor disadvantages, which I'll talk about in a second. But that's pretty cost competitive. Now, the main disadvantage between the two systems is mine is a 100 amp hour battery is 1280 watt hours. And I have two of them, so 2500 watt hours roughly. And with the EcoFlow unit, it comes with a 1024 watt hour battery or 80 amp hours. So basically, if I add the extra battery, I've got 2048 watt hours, but my system has 2500. So we're losing a little bit of power. Is it significant? Yeah, 40 amp hours is a significant amount of difference. But would you ever even use that much power? That's doubtful, unless you are running an air conditioner. But even running the air conditioner, I ran my unit in the garage for 2 hours, the EcoFlow unit with a spare battery. So I ran I think it's an 8500 watt or 8500 BTU air conditioner for a solid 2 hours, just shy of 2 hours. Now, it's not going to run all the time. You're going to have maybe a 50% duty cycle. So let's say at 50%, it would run 4 hours. And then I always cut those figures back, maybe 3.5 hours to be optimistic. But by that time of the night, things have cooled off, and it's not going to probably even be running at 50% duty cycle. So that's probably enough to get you through the night, to get the humidity out of the van and to cool it off a bit before you turn in. So I think they're both adequate for this system. Now, one advantage is the time savings. If you build your own system, if you get everything right the first time and you've planned it out carefully, to build what I have would take about 6 hours. It took me longer first time through, and there were some mistakes, and cables weren't long enough, and all that stuff that goes with it. And if you make a big mistake, it could be an expensive mistake. So that's something you want to take into consideration. My time is worth something. That's why I don't post as much as I used to, because I'm fairly busy. And so would I today build a system from scratch? If you like to build DIY systems, I encourage you to do it. You'll know how it went together. If anything ever goes wrong, you'll know how to fix it. But for the vast majority of people who just need it as a means to an end, they want to be able to run AC things, they want to be able to charge their phones, have some battery supply run off of solar, then I think the EcoFlow units or the Blue Eddy units, whatever you decide to go with, are fine. Now, speaking of the Blue Eddy, let me just go off on a tangent here for a second. I just saw one. Let me pull it up on Amazon. It is the Blue Eddy AC 180p, which I don't know about the letter designation, but I think that's one that's been kind of popularly reviewed online. And it's $549, so it's $50 cheaper than the EcoFlow unit, but the difference is this thing has 1440 watt hours in the base unit, so about 400 more watt hours just as it comes. I don't like this particular unit for my application because of where the plugs are, where the outlets are. They are on the same panel as the control panel, which is great as a battery backup or setting it on the picnic table, but I slide all my power stuff under the bed and I wouldn't be able to see the control panel if I did it with that. So the one thing I like about the EcoFlow units is the outlets, at least on the old ones. The new Delta 3 is different, but on the old ones, the AC outs are in the back and the control panel's on the front. And I can see the front panel and plug in my phones without having to have all the AC cords plugged in the front. They go in the back, which in my installation is near the passenger side door. So I can get at it, but I'm not tripping over it. So I kind of like that aspect of the Blue Yeti. You pick what works for you, but shop around because they all have varying features. The prices, I would say, are within 20% of each other, and really most of them are within 10% for the value, but they have small details that are different between them. I don't need to break down the individual ones. Like I said, in the past, go see Will Pro's Solar on YouTube, and he does a pretty good job reviewing these, as do some other people. I don't need to become a product review site, so I'm not going to do that. Just telling you what I use. Okay, so let's say the price is comparable. The power, we're willing to put up with a little bit less power with the EcoFlow. What are the advantages and disadvantages? So one advantage of these all-in-ones is most of them come with an app now that you can connect with your phone. And if you're on the same Wi-Fi or you connect to it with Bluetooth, you can control it from your phone, see the current status. And I use this all the time. I used it about 10 minutes ago. My van's parked in the driveway, and I just wanted to make sure it was charging the starter battery. So I pulled up the Renogy app, and that worked great. So Renogy has an app, and Victron has an app. But for the all-in-ones, I know for a fact that the EcoFlow app is pretty good because I use it. I can check what's going on in the garage right now from my upstairs office. And the Blue Yeti, I imagine, is comparable. So having an app, having some way to control it, or if you're sitting in the driver's seat, some way to turn it on and off, that's handy. And I think you could do that with your own system. Just put a switch up front, but it's kind of nice that you can do it with your phone. The other thing is it can run panels in series. So right now, with my Renogy unit, I'm limited to 24 volts of charging power, input power, which is pretty much one panel. If I want to add a second panel, I have to add it in parallel. And that way the voltage doesn't go up, but I get more current. But if I do that, now I have to rewire from the panel down to the charging unit because when I set it up, I didn't set it up for that high of a current. So right now I've got a 200 watt panel. I'm going to add another 200 watt this summer. And I want to put them in series so that I can charge the batteries without running newer, fatter cables down. To get the same power, for those of you that aren't familiar, voltage times amperage or volts times current, and that'll give you the power. And if I want to get the same amount of power without increasing the current, I have to up the voltage. So wiring your panels in series makes a certain amount of sense now. But unfortunately, the Renogy unit can't accommodate that, so I wouldn't be able to do that. Now, one downside of the EcoFlow or any of these standalone units is they don't have a way to charge your starting battery. I've never seen one that does. Maybe there's probably one somewhere, but I've never seen one. And so what I would have to do is just plug in a $25 10 amp charger into the EcoFlow, and then I could do the same thing. So that's not a deal breaker. One thing that might be a deal breaker is when you want to expand. You can't just randomly add a battery that easily to the EcoFlow unit because it's designed to use its own smart battery. And that's where they get you. The batteries are hardly ever discounted, but the main units are. So if you want to add the expansion battery, which is actually nice because it interfaces, it's a easy cable to connect. It's an easy way to expand if you find out that the base unit isn't quite enough power for you. But then if you want to add extra batteries, there's no other port to add another smart battery, and there's no place, to add standard batteries. Now, having said that, if you watch my YouTube video, it's either the last one or the one before that, where I talk about powering things in the house, and you can see the EcoFlow unit sitting in the thumbnail picture. I showed a way where you could connect another battery to it, but essentially what you would be doing is pulling the connector for your solar panel. So you'd unplug that and you would plug in the batteries, and then ideally you want to step the voltage up, which is a simple matter, a little box you can connect to it. Now you can plug it in and you can use as many batteries as you want. But then how do you recharge those batteries? They won't recharge from the EcoFlow unit, so you have to add a separate solar charge converter, which is not expensive, $25 probably for an MPPT these days, and connect that to the battery bank in order to recharge. So it complicates the system a bit. But if you're in the 80 to 100 amp hour range of what you want to run, or the 160 to 200 depending on standalone or using an EcoFlow, then it probably makes a lot of sense to just buy an all-in-one unit, a turnkey system, stick it in the van, tie it down to something, please. These people that leave their 25-pound unit on the front seat have never watched a video of what happens to a laptop when you get in an accident. I could just imagine one of these things hitting you. I don't want to be hit by it, so tie it down to something, and then if you can, put some type of cage around it, like I use my bed in the rear seat. It really can't get out of there. It's physically restricted, so even if the batteries broke loose from their mooring, they're not going anywhere. And the cables are done in a way that they're not going to short out or anything. So it's about as crash proof as the rest of the vehicle, which is questionable to begin with. I don't want to hit anything, but take that into consideration whenever you use one of these standalones. But other than that, I think it's a pretty good way to go. I'm tempted to yank out my existing system and not upgrade it at all and put in either the one I have, the EcoFlow I have in the garage, or maybe I'll buy a second one and see how it works out. It's funny that the whole kind of theme of my YouTube channel and my blog was DIY stuff, and now I'm talking about just buying something off the shelf, but that's the way modern manufacturing works. Once the technology's there and enough people start competing, the price comes way down, and I think we're to that point where it doesn't really make a lot of sense to do it any other way. So unless with the provisions I said you wanted a bigger system. But if you're looking at a base system, I'd probably say buy a power station unless you enjoy doing DIY stuff, and there's something to that. At least if something goes wrong with my system, I know what the components are. I can replace individual components, but electronics these days are fairly reliable. I've had my EcoFlow for, I don't know, a year and a half anyway, maybe longer, and I've never had any problems with it. I imagine the quality is similar with all these main name brand products. I did watch a review, I forget the guy's name, kind of always wears a lab coat in his videos, and he mentioned that the support from Blue Eddy is not great if you have a problem. EcoFlow, I had a question one day because something to me wasn't obvious in the manual, although once he explained it, I said, oh yeah, that's obvious. I called him up and I got someone on the line in like 5 minutes. So I found their service to be pretty good. Again, I'm not advocating one or the other. Shop around and look at the reviews and make your decision like everybody else. So that's about all I have for today. I'll add one more thing, which is that I started a Substack. So if you're familiar with Substack, great, you already know what I'm talking about. If you're not familiar with it, basically it's another platform, yet another complicated platform. No, it's not that bad. That allows you to look at people's writings, videos, whatever. It's just a platform. And it's kind of neat because it's easy for the creator, the person that made the stuff, to put all their different formats on it. So what I did was I took everything that was on the blog, put it up there, everything that was worth putting up there. And then I added the podcasts in between so they kind of go with the episodes. Because in the beginning, like I said, if you listen to the first episodes, I used Google LM to basically turn blog posts into podcasts till I had the time to sit down and start doing them in my own voice. I just thought it was kind of fun. Some people love it, some people hate it, but anyway, that's how I did it. And so I put those up and I adjusted them so they're in chronological order with the posts. So if there's a post that has a companion podcast, they're right there together. And now going forward, I'm going to use the platform the way I think it should be used, which is to write short notes, day-to-day musings, maybe post a picture now and then, but that's really Instagram's domain, and where people are looking for photos, I think they're going to Instagram. If they're looking for long-form writing, they're probably going to something like Medium or Substack. But I like the Substack setup. You can subscribe. It doesn't cost you anything. There are no hidden fees. I've never monetized anything other than Amazon links. If somebody wants to buy through Amazon, I get a little cut of it if you use my links. But on Substack, you can have paid subscribers. I have no intention of doing that. If I ever did, I might add something supplemental under a paywall, but I like to keep all my stuff free. My YouTube channel is not monetized, so if you're seeing ads on my YouTube channel, it's because that's what YouTube's doing. It was monetized at the beginning, but what happened is they sent me new terms and conditions, and even though it went to my Gmail address, Gmail filtered it into another folder, and I forget, I put it in the all folder or whatever, but I didn't see it for a month. And so I never replied to it and agreed to the terms and conditions, so they demonetized me. And when they do that, they make you jump through the hoops again that you did when you first became monetized. So whatever it is, 4,000, 5,000 watch hours or something, but now it's in a year. So it doesn't accumulate. So now they get you on the treadmill, so you're making more videos and trying to get to that 5,000. I don't need the $20 that much, so I'm not even going to bother. So all that stuff's free there. My blog has always been free. There's no paywall, and there will be no paywall on Substack. But what is there are some things that won't be appearing on the blog. So I like to keep the blog focused on the DIY type stuff and some travel narrative, and not even long stories. I have one long story on there from 2020 because I traveled all over during 2020. So I thought it was worth a long form post, but long form is more suitable, I think, for Substack, for people that like to read that kind of stuff. Nowadays, who reads long form posts? I don't know. It's I still do, but I imagine younger people are not doing that so much. So if you want to see what's going on, I did put up a post that's exclusive to Substack, so that should appear. I'm Odyssey Camper there, just like I'm Odyssey Camper everywhere. So check it out or don't check it out, either way. And I will be back in touch with you in, I don't know, within the next couple of weeks. And try to stay with the podcasting. I was super busy in the last 2 months, and that's kind of why I did the AI thing. But now I'll be hopefully posting more often. But I think every amateur creator says that, and they fully mean it. They have every intent to do it, and life gets in the way. And unless you're pursuing an income source that'll provide all your income when you're on the road or something like that, very few people have the time to really do a very good YouTube channel. So I watch a lot of the kids that do it in their 20s, and they're super intuitive with it, and they get 1 million views per video and whatnot. I'm never going to be that guy. I just wanted to learn how it worked. I like messing around with it, and that's why I started a blog. I wanted to see how it worked, and I wanted to show my kids how they could do some of this stuff. And I'm an amateur, and this podcast will remain amateur for the foreseeable future. So free is about as good as what you paid for it. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and I'll talk to you soon.